Have you ever found yourself just wrestling with those really big questions? How do we actually know things? Especially the deep stuff, the mysteries of existence. And where does our own reason, our logic, fit in when we start talking about things that feel like they come from, well, somewhere else? Divine revelation, perhaps?
It's a fundamental tension, isn't it? These aren't just abstract thoughts. They genuinely shape how we understand everything.
Exactly.
Well, welcome everyone. We're continuing our exploration in the Wisdom of the Scholastics series today.
And today we're diving into a truly foundational work, St. Thomas Aquinas and his absolutely monumental Summa Theologica.
It's really something else, and it's crucial to remember this isn't just some dusty old history book. It's a meticulously crafted system of thought. Aquinas designed it to really illuminate the nature of reality itself and, our place in it all.
It's a huge undertaking intellectually. And our goal today, our mission, is to unpack some of the really key questions Aquinas tackles right at the very beginning of the Summa.
That's right. We'll be looking first at what he means by sacred doctrine, why it's needed, what it is.
And then moving into arguably the biggest questions, the existence of God, and what we can rationally understand about his essential nature, his attributes.
It's definitely going to be intellectually stimulating, but hopefully also spiritually enriching for you.
We really hope so.
And just before we really jump in, we'd love it if you'd like this discussion, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe click that notification bell. That way you won't miss our future explorations.
Yeah, please do. And we genuinely value your thoughts. So share your reflections, your questions down in the comments section. Your engagement makes this whole learning community so much richer.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get into it. Aquinas starts in a place that kind of surprised me initially. He doesn't just assume we need theology. He asks, do we actually need a doctrine beyond what human philosophy can give us? Is there a real necessity for this sacred doctrine?
It's such a critical starting point, isn't it? He doesn't take it for granted, and his answer is a resounding yes, absolutely necessary.
Why, though? What's the argument?
Well, he argues that human salvation, our ultimate end, requires knowing certain truths that are simply beyond the reach of unaided human reason. Like the doctrine of the Trinity, for instance. Reason alone can't arrive at that. These truths, he says, must be divinely revealed.
Okay, so truths completely beyond reason.
Yes, but it's also more subtle than that. He adds that even truths potentially discoverable by reason, maybe about God's existence or basic morality, are often found only by a few, after a long time, and crucially, with a risk of error mixed in.
So revelation provides a surer, quicker path, even for some things reason might eventually find.
Exactly. It makes essential truths accessible to more people more reliably.
So revelation is key. But Aquinas himself was a brilliant philosopher. Does this mean philosophy gets pushed aside, becomes unimportant?
Not at all. And this is, I think, where his genius for synthesis really shows. He's very clear. Sacred doctrine doesn't dismiss philosophy. Instead, it uses it. His famous term is that philosophy acts as its handmaid.
A handmaid? How does that work?
Think of it like this. They operate on different levels using different starting points, but they can work together. He gives an analogy, like an astronomer and a physicist studying the Earth.
Okay.
The astronomer uses mathematical principles looking at celestial movements. The physicist uses principles of matter and energy, looking at terrestrial phenomena. They study the same reality, but from different perspectives with different tools. Sacred doctrine uses revealed truths as its principles. Philosophy uses principles known through reason. One serves the other.
That's a really helpful way to picture it.
Okay,
but here's a potential sticking point for modern ears. Can something based on faith, on revelation, really be called a science? We tend to see science and faith as separate, maybe even opposed.
That's a very common reaction today, and it's a fair question. Aquinas tackles it head-on. He has a broader understanding of science, scientia in Latin, meaning organized knowledge based on principles.
So not just empirical science, as we often think of it now.
Right. He distinguishes two main types. First, sciences like math or geometry, based on principles that are self-evident to us. We just grasp them directly.
Okay, like 2 + 2, 4.
Exactly. But then there's a second type. Sciences whose principles are drawn from a higher science. Think of optics deriving principles from geometry or music from mathematics.
So a subordinate science.
Precisely. And this is where sacred doctrine fits. Its first principles are the articles of faith, truths revealed by God. These aren't self-evident to us. We can't just intuit the Trinity.
Right.
But they are self-evident to God in his own perfect knowledge. So sacred doctrine derives its principles from the highest science of all God's own knowledge. It's a science because it proceeds logically from principles, even if those principles are accepted by faith.
So the certainty comes from the source of the principles, God himself, even if our acceptance of those principles relies on faith, aided by what Aquinas calls a divine light.
You've got it. Our assent, our yes to these truths, is enabled by God's grace, this divine light. And it's interesting how this science then uses specifics. Think about, say, the life of Abraham in Scripture.
Okay.
Sacred doctrine considers these historical events not just as isolated facts, but as examples, as instances that demonstrate or illuminate the higher, revealed truths about God's plan, his providence, his relationship with humanity.
That gives it a real richness.
Yeah.
Now, if this doctrine covers so much God, creation, angels, human morality, history, how can Aquinas call it a single unified science? It seems incredibly diverse.
The unity comes not from the sheer number of things it studies, but from its formal perspective, its formal object, as he puts it.
Formal object.
Yeah, meaning the specific angle or viewpoint from which it considers everything. And for sacred doctrine, that unifying viewpoint is God, understood through the lens of divine revelation. Everything, creatures, actions, history is considered insofar as it relates to God as he has revealed himself. That's the unifying thread.
Okay, that makes sense. And he also calls it both speculative and practical, right? How does that work?
It is both. It's speculative because its primary aim is knowledge of divine truths, knowing God for his own sake. But it's also practical because this knowledge isn't just abstract. It directs human actions towards our ultimate end, eternal happiness or beatitude.
But he leans one way more than the other.
He argues it's primarily speculative. The practical guidance flows from the foundational understanding of God and his plan. Knowledge comes first, then action.
And he's not shy about claiming this doctrine is superior to all others, the chief among sciences. Why so bold?
Well, for Aquinas, it follows logically. First, it's certainty. It derives its principles from God's own infallible knowledge revealed to us. That's a higher degree of certainty than conclusions based on fallible human reason alone.
Okay, certainty.
And second, it's subject matter. It deals with the highest reality, God himself, and all things in relation to God. Other sciences deal with limited, created aspects of reality. So by both certainty and subject matter, he argues, it holds the preeminent place. It truly is the queen of the sciences in his view.
A powerful claim. Now, how does this queen communicate? If its principles are based on revelation, does it just rely on quoting scripture, or does reason still have a role in doing theology?
It definitely leans heavily on authority, especially sacred scripture, which he sees as the bedrock, then also the writings of the church fathers and doctors. These are its primary sources of argument.
But not only authority.
No, and this loops back to the handmaid idea. Reason plays a crucial role, not, he insists, to prove the articles of faith themselves, those are accepted through divine light. But reason is essential for several things. To explore the implications of revealed truths, to show their internal coherence, to clarify them, to organize them systematically.
And to defend them.
Exactly. To answer objections raised against the faith, showing that revealed truths aren't contrary to reason, even if they sometimes surpass it. Reason helps build understanding around the core mysteries.
That balance is key. What about the language used? Scripture often uses metaphors, similes, very earthly images for divine things. Doesn't that seem, I don't know, a bit undignified for such a lofty subject?
That's another insightful question he addresses directly. His answer is beautiful, really. He says it's not about tarnishing God's dignity, it's about accommodating our way of knowing.
How so?
Our human intellect naturally learns through the senses, through things we can see, touch, imagine. So divine and spiritual truths are fittingly presented using metaphors drawn from the material world we understand. It makes the invisible accessible through the visible.
So it meets us where we are.
Precisely. He also suggests it serves other purposes. It can veil the truths slightly from those unprepared, preventing misunderstanding or misuse. And paradoxically, the effort to understand the metaphor can actually stir the mind to deeper contemplation and devotion.
That's fascinating. And related to this, he talks about the several senses of Scripture, right? It's not just the literal meaning.
Yes, this is incredibly important for understanding how he and much of the tradition read Scripture. There's the foundational, literal or historical sense, what the words actually signify about events, people, things.
The plain meaning.
The plain meaning, yes. But Aquinas, following tradition, says that the things signified by the words can, themselves, signify other things. This gives rise to the spiritual senses.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The classic one is the Exodus. The literal sense is the historical event of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. But that event, that thing, can signify Christ leading us from sin to grace. That's the allegorical sense relating to Christ. It can signify our own moral struggle, moving from vice to virtue, the moral or tropological sense. And it can signify our ultimate journey towards heavenly glory, the anagogical sense, relating to eternal things.
Wow, so one passage can resonate on multiple levels of meaning simultaneously.
Exactly, all grounded in the literal sense, but opening up layers of divine truth. It's a very rich way of reading.
Okay, so we have this framework. A necessary sacred doctrine, a science based on revelation, using reason as a handmaid, communicating through analogy in multiple senses. With that foundation laid, Aquinas then pivots to, well, the foundation of everything, God's existence.
The ultimate question.
And again, he starts perhaps counterintuitively. He asks, is God's existence self-evident? Many people might just say, well, obviously.
Right, it feels intuitive to many. But Aquinas is incredibly precise. He makes a distinction. Is the proposition God exists self-evident in itself, per se? Yes, he said.
Yes.
Because, as he will argue later, God's very essence is his existence. To be God is to exist. The predicate exists is contained within the subject, God, much like having three sides is contained within the idea of triangle.
Okay, self-evident in itself.
But he immediately adds, is it self-evident to us? Quod nos. And here he says no.
Why not?
Because we don't have direct intellectual access to God's essence in this life. Our knowledge starts from sense experience, from observing the created world. We don't see God's essence directly, so the statement God exists isn't immediately obvious to our minds, even if it's intrinsically true.
That's a crucial distinction. So if it's not self-evident to us, how can we know it? Can it be proven or demonstrated?
Yes, he argues it can be demonstrated. But again, with a qualification, we can't demonstrate it a priori, meaning from the cause. We can't start with God's essence, the cause, and deduce his existence because we don't know the essence first.
So how then?
We must demonstrate it a posteriori, meaning from the effect. We start with the observable effects of God in the world, things like motion, causality, contingency, perfection, order, and reason backwards from these effects to their necessary cause.
Like seeing smoke and reasoning there must be fire.
Exactly. Or like seeing a complex watch and reasoning there must be a watchmaker. We see the effects in creation and reason back to the Creator. He even quotes scripture here. The invisible things of him are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made.
And this leads us directly to the famous 5 ways. These are his 5 arguments, reasoning from effects back to God as the first cause.
That's right. They're concise, logical arguments starting from common observations about the world.
Can we walk through them briefly, just the core idea of each?
Absolutely. The first way is from motion. We see things moving, changing. Anything that moves is put into motion by something else. You can't have an infinite regress of movers because then there'd be no first mover to start it all. So there must be a first mover itself unmoved. And this everyone understands to be God.
Okay, motion implies an unmoved mover. What's next?
The second way is from efficient cause. We observe causes and effects. Nothing can cause itself. It needs a prior cause. Again, you can't have an infinite chain of causes stretching back forever. So there must be a first efficient cause, uncaused itself. That's God.
Got it. First cause. The third.
The third way is from possibility and necessity. We see things around us that are contingent, they exist, but they could not exist. Trees, animals, us. If everything were merely contingent, then at some point in the infinite past it's possible nothing existed. And if nothing existed, nothing could start existing again. But things do exist, so there must be something that exists necessarily whose existence isn't contingent or dependent. A necessary being, that's God.
That was a bit more complex, but it makes sense. A necessary being is required for contingent beings to exist at all. Number 4.
The fourth way is from gradation or degrees of perfection. We notice things are more or less good, true, noble, hot, etc. This implies a standard, a maximum of these perfections. There must be something that is the ultimate source of all goodness, truth, nobility, something that is maximally perfect. This is the cause of all perfection and other things. That's God.
The benchmark of perfection. And the last one.
The fifth way is from the governance of the world or design, the teleological argument. We see natural things, even non-intelligent ones like planets or plants, acting consistently towards an end, achieving a purpose. They don't do this by chance. They act as if guided. Like an arrow needs an archer to hit a target, these natural things acting purposefully require an intelligent designer guiding them to their end. This intelligent director is God.
5 distinct lines of reasoning, all starting from observation, all pointing towards a first cause, or prime mover, or necessary being, which he identifies as God.
Exactly. And he anticipates objections, too. Like, what about evil? If God exists, why is there evil?
Yeah, that's a huge one for many people. How does he respond within this context?
His brief reply here is profound. He says, God, being the highest good, wouldn't permit any evil unless he could bring a greater good out of it. It's part of his providence. He also addresses the objection that maybe nature just explains itself without needing God.
Right, maybe things just happen naturally.
And he replies that nature acting for an end is directed by a higher agent. Natural causes are like instruments in the hand of the primary agent, God. They don't replace him, they manifest his governance.
So, having demonstrated God's existence, Aquinas then moves on to explore what God is like, his nature, his attributes, starting with something called simplicity. What does that mean? It sounds, well, simple.
It sounds simple, but it's perhaps one of the most fundamental and challenging concepts. It does not mean God is easy to understand or basic. It means God is not composed of parts.
Not composed of parts, like physical parts.
Not physical parts, obviously, since God isn't a body, but also not metaphysical parts, like matter and form, or potentiality and actuality, or even essence and existence as distinct principles within him.
Whoa, okay. Unpack that a bit. Potentiality and actuality.
Think about us. We have potential to grow, to learn, to change. We move from potentiality, what we could be, to actuality, what we are. Aquinas says God is pure act, actus purus. He has no potentiality for change or development. He simply is, fully and perfectly, all at once.
So, no becoming, just being.
Exactly. And this leads to the most crucial point about simplicity. In God, essence, what he is, and existence, that he is, are identical.
Essence is existence.
Yes. For everything else, for creatures, what something is, its essence, like dogness, is distinct from the fact that it exists. Its existence is something received, participated. But God's very essence is to exist. He is existence itself, uncaused, underived. This absolute lack of composition is what divine simplicity means. He is utterly one without any internal division or structure.
That is a lot to take in. Pure act, essence is existence. Utterly simple, meaning non-composite.
It's mind-bending, but it's the logical consequence of being the uncaused first cause. And from this simplicity, other attributes flow, like perfection.
Right, if he's pure act, with no unactualized potential, he must be perfect.
Precisely. God possesses all perfections, not added together, but in a simple, eminent way, because he is the source of all perfection found in creatures. Creatures are like God, but only by participation, as effects imperfectly reflect their cause.
And goodness. Is that linked to perfection?
Definitely. Aquinas argues that being and goodness are fundamentally related, even convertible. To the extent that something exists, it is good, desirable. God, as supreme being, pure act, the fullness of existence, is therefore supreme goodness itself. He is goodness. All other things are good only by participating in his goodness.
So simplicity leads to perfection and goodness. What about things like infinity?
Infinity also follows. Since God is not composed of matter and form, and his essence isn't limited by being received into some potentiality, his being is unlimited. Creatures are limited by their essence and potentiality. God, being pure act, is boundless, infinite.
He's everywhere, omnipresent.
Yes, but not in the way a physical object fills space. God is present everywhere by his power, as the cause sustaining all things in existence, by his presence, as everything is bare and open to his knowledge, and by his essence, as the intimate source of being for all that is. He contains all things rather than being contained by them. He's the ground of all place and space.
And unchanging. Immutability.
Absolutely flows from being pure act. Change requires moving from potential to actual. Since God has no potentiality, he cannot change. He is eternally the same. This absolute immutability belongs only to God.
Which must mean he's eternal, right? Existing outside of time.
Exactly. Aquinas uses Boethius' famous definition. Eternity is the simultaneously whole and perfect possession of interminable life.
Simultaneously whole, what does that mean?
It means no before or after, no succession of moments like we experience in time. God's existence isn't stretched out, it's possessed all at once, in a single complete now. He has no beginning, no end, and no unfolding sequence within his being. He is the author of time, not subject to it.
And he distinguishes this from time and also from something called aeviternity.
Yes, time is the measure of change in material things, marked by succession. Eternity is God's timeless existence. Aeviternity is a kind of intermediate state he assigns to angels, spiritual beings who have a beginning but no end, and experience a succession of thoughts or actions, but without the fundamental change tied to matter. It's a subtle distinction.
Okay, one last major attribute from this section. Unity. God is one. Seems obvious, but how does Aquinas nail it down?
He argues it follows from God's simplicity and infinity. One fundamentally means undivided. Since God is absolutely simple, without parts, he is intrinsically undivided, hence supremely one.
And could there be more than one God?
He argues no. If there were two gods, they'd have to differ in some way. But any difference would imply some limitation or imperfection in one or both, contradicting the nature of God as infinite and perfect. An infinite being, by definition, contains all perfection, leaving no room for another distinct infinite being. So God must be absolutely unique, one.
So we've gone from the need for sacred doctrine to proving God's existence, to exploring these profound attributes: simplicity, perfection, goodness, infinity, omnipresence, immutability, eternity, unity. Where does this leave us, though? Our ability to actually know this God. Can our human minds fully grasp God's essence?
And here, Aquinas brings us back to earth, in a way. His clear answer is no, not in this life, not by our natural powers alone.
Why not, after all this reasoning?
Because our intellect, in its current state, relies on abstracting concepts from sensory experience. We understand things by forming mental images or concepts based on what we see, hear, touch. God is incorporeal, infinite, utterly simple. He doesn't fit into those categories. He's beyond any image or concept we can naturally form.
So we can know that he exists and what he is not, and something about his attributes through analogy and reasoning from effects.
Exactly. We can know quite a lot about God, but we cannot in this life have a direct, comprehensive grasp of his divine essence as he is in himself. That kind of vision, the beatific vision, requires a supernatural gift, a light of glory, elevating the intellect beyond its natural capacity.
Which circles back beautifully to the beginning, doesn't it? The necessity of divine revelation.
It really does. Reason can take us incredibly far, preparing the ground, clearing objections, giving us genuine knowledge about God. But to know God more intimately, to know those truths necessary for salvation that exceed reason, and ultimately to see him face to face, we rely on his self-revelation and his grace.
It's not a limitation in a negative sense then, but an invitation. An invitation to receive what's freely given beyond what we can achieve on our own.
That's a wonderful way to put it. The Summa itself is an exercise in using reason to explore the heights and depths of what can be known, both naturally and through faith. It's a pathway, disciplined and rigorous, leading us towards these profound mysteries.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground today, really tracing Aquinas' initial steps in the Summa, from why we need sacred doctrine and understanding its nature as a unique science,
to walking through the logical arguments for God's existence, the 5 ways, reasoning from the world around us.
and then delving into those incredible divine attributes: simplicity, perfection, goodness, infinity, omnipresence, immutability, eternity, unity, trying to grasp what it means for God to be God.
And finally, acknowledging the limits of our own intellect while affirming the crucial role of God's revelation in bridging that gap.
As you've listened, what really stood out to you from this journey into Aquinas' thought? Does this kind of rigorous, rational approach, combined with faith, challenge your own views? Does it deepen your understanding, perhaps?
We'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts on that.
And here's maybe a final thought to ponder. How does Aquinas' powerful insistence on using both rigorous reason and accepting divine revelation offer us a model for seeking truth today? In a world often polarized between pure rationalism and maybe uncritical faith, what can we learn from this synthesis?
It's a question with real implications for how we navigate our own intellectual and spiritual lives, isn't it?
Definitely something to think about.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this exploration of Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica, part of our Wisdom of the Scholastic series.
If you found this discussion valuable, if it sparked something for you, please do give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more, and click that notification bell.
And please share your reflections and questions in the comments below. We really do read them and appreciate the community interaction.
Join us next time as we continue to explore insights from the great thinkers of history. Thanks for listening.